What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holt's back again with another e-commerce conversations. I hope all is well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Michael. What's up, man?
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like deja vu.
Yeah, getting those audio issues fixed. So hopefully this comes through sounding all right.
Yeah, we're working through little technical issues. Hopefully we've got those resolved. I am excited to see you on the other side of the Internet. For our listeners who have never heard of you, don't follow you on X, who the heck are you and what the heck do you do?
So there's probably not many. I think I got like 300 followers on X. Just got on there about a year ago. But so my name is Michael Simpson. I own discountcatholicproducts.com. So kind of an old school online retailer, Catholic products, started in 2003. My wife and I bought it 4 years ago in 2021 and ran it together for a couple of years. And here recently I've kind of stepped back and had a full-time employee taking over most of it and started volunteering for a mission with the National Guard, where I've also served for 22 years. We have 7 kids and had them involved in the business. So just looking forward to talking about some of that today.
Cool. So you're living that full Catholic life, huh? 7
Exactly.
kids?
Yep. Yes, we're definitely open to life. So
So you bought this pretty much at the peak of e-commerce, 2021. How did you find this website? Or were you a customer of it, or?
no, I found it on Quiet Light. So many of your listeners may be familiar with Quiet Light, probably the best e-commerce brokerage out there. I was just on the email list for about a year, and this was the first one that came along that kind of met my criteria. I was really looking for something that was off Amazon. I'd sold some stuff on Amazon before for a few years and saw the writing on the wall that being a reseller on Amazon was not a great long-term business model, and all the aggregators had driven the prices up to crazy levels, so didn't want to get into that game. So I was looking for something that had its own website. I didn't want to sell like women's clothing or some product, snake oil that I just didn't care about. And then the final thing was I was looking for something that wasn't solely dependent on a single product, imported from China. I've got a security clearance, so wiring $50,000 PO, for a PO to China or flying to China to visit a factory was just out of the question for me. So this was the first one that came along and was kind of in our price range, and so I saw it, jumped on it.
So when you say it was in your price range, just kind of walk through, like, did you have to get financing to make this purchase?
Yeah.
What
So
size business was this?
had probably $30,000-$40,000 available for a down payment. I just deployed to Africa for about a year with the National Guard, so I was able to save up some money from that. Came back during COVID and, went back to my job and really didn't like it. So I'd been looking to go into business for myself. And so I'd heard about the SBA loan. I read Buy Then Build by Walker Diebold. Great book, kind of motivated me to think about, hey, I could buy a business that could replace my income for maybe just tens of thousands of dollars down. Instead of spending, $400,000 or $500,000 to buy a business making $100,000. So went through the SBA loan process. It was lengthy. Deal almost died once or twice, but after 5 months, we got across the finish line and had our own business. So,
did you find in that process that the business you received was pretty similar to what your expectations were? I've never purchased a business before, so I would imagine.
In retrospect, there was a couple of things. I think we negotiated down some of the inventory. So this business has thousands of products. So we have thousands of products, thousands of SKUs in stock. There was like $75,000 worth of inventory, and I negotiated that down to $65,000, and probably still overpaid by $10,000 or $15,000. There was just a lot of stale inventory that, 10 units in stock. Oh, that's no big deal. And then you go back and realize like it's sold 1 per year. So that particular item might be a 10-year supply. And then there's some other stuff that just never sold. It just no market for it anymore. Eventually threw it away. It was damaged or something. Like there were some bracelets with the stretchy thing in them that is just worn out. Definitely underestimated working capital as well. That's something that, I just saw that, hey, they drop ship some stuff. You get paid immediately by your customer, gets deposited the next day. And then suppliers mostly gave us 30-day terms, and U.S. suppliers. I thought cash flow conversion would be great, and turned out to be a little harder than I thought, especially as you're growing, buying more inventory. Now you got to tie up more cash and inventory. And definitely underestimated how much was being drop shipped. I thought it was like 10%, just some larger items and expensive things like jewelry, and it turned out to be a lot more. So that was a change we made pretty early on. Was we brought a lot more products in-house and stopped relying on drop shipping, because right as we bought the business was when the supply chain just went to hell. So stuff was coming from Italy, from America, from China, from all over the world, and our suppliers couldn't get it, so they couldn't get it to us. And we just had back orders and all sorts of problems with supply chain for that first year, mostly because we were drop shipping items that we didn't actually have and our suppliers didn't have.
Now, was he working with a 3PL, or did you have to take on the inventory and handle the
No,
orders
it's all there. Most of the stuff we sell is pretty small and light, and we sell things for like $1 or $2, and with thousands of SKUs, there's just no way we could make a 3PL. The pick, pack, and ship fees would just kill us. And sometimes people had ordered like 20 or 30 individual items at $1 a piece. A 3PL would just kill us. So no, we've had our own warehouse the whole time. We wanted to run it out of our house. That didn't work out. Just wasn't large enough. So we had to rent a warehouse and find that like literally the day before we closed. We were signing a lease on a warehouse to get a U-Haul full of inventory and bring it back here to Albuquerque, where we're located.
So let's talk about, you've got this business. There's no employees, right? You said it was just kind of a solo entrepreneur?
Yeah, the seller had operated it with like her best friend, and her best friend couldn't work anymore, was doing the pick, pack, and ship and the customer service. And so that's part of the reason why she sold it. Kind of underestimated how much work is going to be. I sort of thought, well, one person, 1.5 was running it. My wife and I should handle it no problem. And quickly realized there was a lot more there. It was basically both of us working almost full time. My wife did the pick, pack, and ship, and I did the customer service and reordering and trying to update the website, fix all the problems. There was a lot of things, all the financial stuff. We hired one employee pretty early on, and just as she got trained up, she said, "Hey, I'm moving to the East Coast to, moving with my boyfriend who's in the Army." So lost her, tried to hire a replacement. That didn't work out. So we spent like 2 years with my wife in there doing the pick, pack, and ship a couple times a week, and me going in every day and taking care of everything else. And we finally got a full-time employee hired about a year ago. Happens to be my wife's sister. So we've kept it, pretty much a family business the whole time.
So your wife stepped out of the business. It's just your wife's sister who is effectively doing all the annual orders, customer service.
Yep. Yeah, we were expecting our 7th baby here about a year ago, and so at that point we realized there's no way my wife's going to be able to keep working in the business and take care of a newborn, not with a few other young kids at home that she was homeschooling. So hired my sister-in-law, and that's worked out great. She's able to come in there, pick up her son from school, just kind of work like shorter hours, like 8 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. And that's enough time to get all the orders picked, packed, and shipped and take care of customer service. So
I noticed the website's on Ecommerce, which is not a platform.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before we bought the business. Almost everybody I've talked to since buying the business has never heard of it. And I thought early on, we'll migrate to Shopify. That's easy. I've heard lots of people do that. They buy a business and it's on a legacy platform. They migrate to Shopify. This will be easy. $40,000, 2 years later, I shut that project down. The tech debt was just too much for me to overcome with my level of technical expertise, and even hiring contractors. and then taking the risk of if we change the platform, all our SEO could disappear. Google Ads may not work well. Everybody I talked to said, you're going to see a drop in sales for at least a month or two, maybe 6 months after you migrate a website. And it was around that time business started declining a little bit and decided it was too great a risk and pulled the plug on the migration to Shopify project, which hope to restart that at some point, just not right now.
Yeah, so let's walk through. You have the SBA loan. How much longer is that loan
So
until it's going to be paid off?
It's a 10-year loan. We got a very small seller note, like 5% of the sale price, also on a 10-year loan. So we're 4 years into that. So we paid down, maybe 20, 25% of the total debt. Fortunately, I got a line of credit before we needed it, which I recommend to everybody to do. You want to get a line of credit set up with the bank before you need the money. Because as soon as you need the money, your only option is going to be like a high interest loan from PayPal or Wayflyer or, Shopify or somebody like that who will be happy to charge you 20% interest. But we got the SBA loan that was fixed at 5.5%. So really happy that got a fixed loan for the first 5 years. So we were able to keep making the debt payments with no issue for those first few years. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now, is just trying to pay down that debt and hopefully get everything paid off and get some more cash flow.
Yeah, so you've had to, with the additional baby, with the issues, the kind of the unknown issues of acquiring a business and maybe not best practices or things that you just weren't aware of, you had to kind of make this project a side project again. That's correct?
Yeah, a couple of months ago, I was paying myself, and I was realizing I was basically borrowing from a line of credit to pay my own very meager salary, and that just didn't make sense. Why am I borrowing money to pay my salary just to try and pay it back next month, when sales go up? So I decided to, opportunity came up, honestly had been kind of praying a lot that the business would do better, that something would come along and change. And, God always answers your prayers, not necessarily in the way you expect or want. And this just happened to be an opportunity came along to volunteer for the mission with the National Guard that was going to be local, and I'd be able to work kind of regular-ish hours, and the pay was double what I was going to be paying myself. And so at that point decided this is what I need to do, at least for the next few months, get the business in a better position financially, pay down some debt, and, just kind of put it on autopilot, with one employee, until I can build up some cash and get ready to take another stab at trying to migrate and grow it.
Well, you're almost, it's kind of the interesting perspective with a company kind of at this level, a lot of this stuff figured out. You have a team member who's operating it, putting the time into it. Is it still, is it in a position where it's cash flowing positively now that you're no longer pulling a salary out of it, or is it still kind of at a break-even negative point?
Yeah, I mean, we have decent contribution margin. Like we have a 30% contribution margin after paying for cost of goods, advertising, all of our variable costs. It's just in absolute dollars, that's not quite enough to cover our fixed expenses, between a loan payment, rent, insurance, paying an employee, and then paying myself was, one of the biggest line items. So once I got rid of that owner salary, all of a sudden the business is profitable again. So
do you think it's, with your sister-in-law handling the business, are there tasks beyond kind of like the day-to-day maintenance that you might be able to kind of assign to her to allow her to build new opportunities? Or, do you see any opportunity in that? Basically, kind of the way I think about it is building a business that, can scale and grow without your full-time input might be a really nice way of looking at the business now, as you use your primary income to put food on the table and a roof over the head for your family.
yeah, I'm in a mastermind group, and when I said, hey, sales are finally up this month and I really haven't been working in the business at all, somebody joked like, I think you found the problem. Maybe I was putting too much time into the business and it just wasn't very productive. And looking back in retrospect, there's probably some times where I was doing tasks that maybe weren't really moving the needle forward. Not working on sending an email and getting new customers, but let me go look at this report again, or go over these numbers again, or make a minor tweak to one of 4,000 product pages. It's probably not going to move the needle. So now that I'm not in it day to day, I have to really focus on, okay, the thing I got to focus on right now is I need to reorder inventory. I need to go place that purchase order with the supplier. I need to identify a new product to add. I need to work on this email campaign, that's going to drive $1,000 in sales, tomorrow when I get it launched. That's more important than kind of twiddling my thumbs and doing stuff that was not really moving the needle.
So how much time would you say you're putting into the business now as a side project?
Realistically, I've only been able to put maybe an hour or two a week into it. The mission I'm on with the National Guard, it's 12-hour days for the most part. So by the time I get home at 6-7 o'clock at night, there's not a lot left to go work on the business. So haven't been sending as many emails as I probably should, and a little behind on reordering inventory. So I've been trying to get our employee trained up to take over more of those roles. She's taken on a lot of stuff, and so that's been kind of nice that I've been able to, give her a raise and give her another raise and a newer title. Because I really think she probably can run a lot of the stuff that I was doing before, and in some ways probably do it better. I saw that with my wife. Like, she did the pick, pack, and ship twice as fast as I could. I would get kind of the typical entrepreneurship ADD and pull one thing and start working on another thing, and then the phone would ring and I'd answer a customer service call, and then before I knew it, I was trying to pack 4 different orders at once, and my wife's just sit there plugging away, getting it done twice as fast as me. So
yeah, I mean, I think nobody likes to kind of be in this position where they're forced to go from a full-time business to a side business, and I can understand whether or not you went through this. From my perspective, I would imagine that would kind of lead to a sense of doubt and questioning my abilities, and also just like, historically speaking, that's not going to be like a celebratory thing. However, from my perspective, I think what it does is, scarcity and understanding you have scarce resources forces you to, as you've said earlier, prioritize how you're allocating your very limited time and energy and efforts, and allowing other people within your organization to take on more responsibilities within the company that can, in the long run, make this business more resilient and more sustainable and thrive in a way that maybe you hadn't originally anticipated. And not only that, forcing you to become that founder to work on the business rather than in the business, and the trap that can affect a lot of entrepreneurs at a very early rate. So I don't know if like you've set any kind of like benchmarks or goals for your team members to, I guess my unsolicited advice, kind of going back to giving your team member a raise, your sister-in-law a raise, it's like, well, have her achieve certain things that elevate her role rather than paying her for that and then asking her to do it. So first have her prove that she can do these things. Can she start drafting up emails? Can she start handling inventory management, ordering products? Can she start sourcing products? And then if she can show herself to do that, then all of a sudden that's where she's going to kind of like generate that increase in salary to justify the value she's bringing to the business.
yeah, and that's pretty much what I've done so far is like, okay, hey, I'm handing off customer service to you. Went over that, she started answering the phone and answering the emails, and then, okay, based on that, here's a new title and a raise. And so the next step is probably working on those marketing emails or the inventory ordering. She's taken over some of that now for some simpler suppliers, but we have some where we're ordering, hundreds of different products. and the inventory forecasting that goes into looking at 500 different products, over the last couple of years. I'm still handling those ones right now, or not handling them and letting them sit there, as I should be reordering inventory. But that's the goal, is to get her to the point where she's handling reordering that inventory based on kind of some rules and guidelines I've set, and then doing the marketing emails and taking myself out of almost all the day-to-day things, and so I can focus on the long-term goals, and hopefully bring on some new employees at some point in the future, and really be more of that working on the business owner, instead of just down there in the trenches, answering the phone and packing orders and doing all the stuff that is probably not the best use of my time.
Now, let's kind of talk about the strategy that you have with the business. I noticed on the website you have, like Catholics as your customer and churches as your customers.
Yes.
How do you see that breakdown in sales?
I'd say it's probably about 75-80% are just individual customers, and then the remainder is mostly churches and schools. And one thing I really didn't pay attention to when I was buying the business, but it's been a really nice side effect, is the industry you go into, like, really kind of changes who your suppliers and who your customers are. And we've just had amazing customers. Like, we had a customer, we shipped her a statue, it broke in transit, we reshipped her another one for free. She ended up like fixing the statue, selling it on eBay, and sent us the money. I mean, who does that? Like, I don't know where else you would find customers that would do something like that. Or we reship something, somebody says this necklace wasn't delivered. We reship another one for free. And then they say, oh, I found the original one. Can I pay you for that too? And that's happened dozens of times, stories like that. So it's just really nice having customers that are just genuinely good, decent people that aren't trying to rip us off. Now, customers on Amazon are completely different. Every customer on Amazon is trying to scam us or rip us off, but we do very little on Amazon. So everyone who comes to our website, for the most part, has been, very understanding. Churches are great customers to work for, because you're getting a B2B type sale, maybe a $500, $1,000 order, but it's not like selling to a large business or government organization where it's this months-long sales cycle, or you have to get approval from 12 different people and go to this committee before somebody can decide to change what they're ordering. It's usually one or two people, the parish secretary or the priest is placing an order themselves, and they tend to keep coming back over and over again to order things year after year. So that's been a really nice part of the business.
Yeah, I would imagine having a business built around a very specific niche and tied to something that is, fundamental and instrumental to your customers' lives, like a religion. I would imagine that offers some really unique storytelling abilities, some connection abilities, in a way to, build a loyal customer, and almost like a strong framework for, word of mouth growth and recommendation growth that you wouldn't be able to get from, just someone buying on Amazon, something from some Chinese seller that, is not even connected to the religion. So, I don't know how much you're doing this, but that would be something I would really try to lean into as an individual who, is not only the founder of the company or the owner of the company, but also, a customer of the company, someone who believes in the products that you're producing, you're selling, you're sourcing. And I don't know how much of your story is part of the brand, or if that's part of the strategy as you move forward.
So one thing to note is we are really a demand capture business, not a demand generation. We probably could do some demand generation with meta ads and things like that, but in general, the limited experiments have been, not profitable even remotely. Lucky to get a 1.0 ROAS on Facebook versus if we just run Google Shopping ads, we can typically get 4 or more all day long. So we're almost totally reliant on Google, whether it's Google search or Google Shopping ads. Social media has never really been a huge part. The previous owner tried that, maybe not executed the best, but I just saw that like less than 1% of sales came from social media in the previous couple of years, and they're paying somebody $800 a month to post there daily. Didn't really make sense. I do think that, YouTube would probably be a good place to go. Haven't really gone into that at all. I think that's definitely a growth area that we could explore. There's a lot of influencers in the space. My wife and I were watching a guy who was pretty popular, had a few 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Didn't really watch his stuff much, but we just happened to be watching this one, and he was in the middle of a talk, and he just mentioned, yeah, and go to discountcatholicproducts.com to buy your brown scapular. And it's like, wait, what? Did he just say that? And then all of a sudden, definitely saw a spike from that, a bunch of people searching for it, and a nice little spike there because tens of thousands of people saw that video. And I went back and looked and like, yeah, it turns out this guy was one of our best customers. I just didn't realize it because it was his church ordering it under a different person's name, not him. So there's definitely a lot of marketing opportunities there.
When I think about it, I think about it not necessarily from like your pay perspective, but from your website presence. Like, can you have that on all your PDPs? Have a section that says about the Simpson family and what we believe in and why we have this store. So it's on every PDP. It's going to help with conversions. And then you have our story page on the website. And then in addition to that, your email content is no longer just like product, but you get into the reason why and the mission and the purpose. And you could even have like simple emails that are like, let us pray for you. Tell us, something that we can help you and your family. Like we want to be a resource for you guys and, share that positivity and build that community on a one-on-one level that, at your size and your scale, other companies are not going to be able to do. And you could just send like personalized little videos of prayer or, reaching out or storytelling, kind of doing the things that are more time intensive than money intensive is really how I would think about your opportunities for connection with your customer base.
Yeah, email's probably been the primary way we've tried to connect with our customers. That was something the previous owner had done a pretty good job of. And her emails had a very different voice from ours. We tried to kind of keep that going as we bought the business, but we quickly realized like that was her voice and we have a different voice. And I think it's worked out well. We've gotten a lot of positive responses to the emails over the years, and we get a lot of customers who call on the phone because they're like, I'm 80 years old. I don't know how to use your website. Let me just call you and tell you what I want to order. And they would often mention the emails, or they would know us by name, or, we would include, hey, here's a picture of our daughter wearing this, First Communion veil. Or, here's one of our kids or something like that, helping us pack orders in the warehouse. And yeah, those sorts of things always got very positive responses. And we, try to humanize it and say, hey, this is a real company. These are real people. We're not just a faceless drop shipper on the internet. There's a family here behind that. And I will say, though, that frankly, for a lot of our competition, they take a similar tact. So it's not unique in our space. That's another aspect of this industry is in some cases we're competing against nonprofits. So you have people that are able to, a lot of local Catholic retail stores are they're subsidized by a church, or the person running them is basically doing it and not paying themselves because they see it as their mission. So it does certainly make it harder when you're competing against people who are willing to sell at or below cost. Not across all things, but certainly for some products. So
yeah, where can people support you, buy your products, follow you?
Yeah, discountcatholicproducts.com. Not really too busy on the socials, but just there on our website. I'm nowadays really just on X, on Twitter, Michael _ biz, B-I-Z. Had a hard time finding a good handle on there, joining so late. Everything else is pretty much taken. So
Sweet. Well, this has been another e-commerce conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Cheers. Keep on growing.